I don't give pastoral prayers very often, but I'm going to give one this morning. So I'm called to do this. I invite you into a quiet moment with me while I pray. Spirit of life, Holy One, unknowable mystery, hear our prayer. We've experienced a disturbing week of yet another mass shooting, increasing political divisiveness, uncovered hidden histories of racial massacres, and more reports of violence against people of color. Our country is still fighting a foreign war. Give us comfort among the chaos of weekly events. We see the pandemic restrictions easing at the local level, but our fear and uncertainty after 15 months can't be turned off like a switch. We worry about what might happen next. Spirit of life, please keep us from being overwhelmed. Please keep us from becoming angry. Keep us from seeking revenge or spouting hate in words and thoughts. Let us hold our pain and grief, but let us not become numb to the pain of others. Holy One, our nerves are raw. Help us to see that the only response to hate is love. The only response to violence is peace. And the only balm for sorrow is hope. Help us keep hope alive by assuring us that all is not lost. All is not lost when we persevere toward justice. Help us to remember to tell those close to us that we love them. Guide us to be present and breathe deeply to see the wonders of this life. Hear our prayer that all may have safety and peace and love. In all your many blessed names. Amen. Now I'll invite Sherry to unmute herself for our chalice reading.
The reading for today is taken from Faith Like a River, Themes from Unitarian Universalist History by Alison Cornish and Jackie Clement. In 1637, the settlers in what was to become the town of Dedham, Massachusetts, wanted to start a church. The problem was the roughly 30 families didn't know each other and therefore didn't know what sort of church to begin. As newcomers to the American wilderness, they had had time only to set up enough government to apportion land, build and equip homes, and begin the work of farming. Religiously, they were strangers. However, the demands of survival and the religious call of their hearts imposed the need for them to come together. To that end, they began a year-long series of cottage meetings, each organized around discussion of a particular question. We might think that in order to know each other's religious views and needs, these New England ancestors might choose topics like salvation, damnation, predestination, or morality, but they did not. What they mostly discussed were matters of civil organization. For in their understanding, the church would reflect the ethic of the larger society. And what they longed for was sincere religious association based in love and founded in freedom. This was the sort of church the small group in Dedham, Massachusetts decided to build. It was a church, much like its neighbors, and much like the other churches that would be built in New England in the coming decades. A radically lay-led church gathered by mutual consent rather than by mutual belief, founded in covenant rather than creed, and governed by the congregation itself. Make no mistake, this group did not hold widely varying theological beliefs that would have made it unable to exist as a creedal church. But their belief that churches should be self-governing organizations gathered in the spirit of mutual love was paramount. This basis for gathering and governing a church by congregational determination was described 10 years after the founding of the Dedham Church in a document known commonly as the Cambridge Platform.
Now I'll invite you to get in a comfortable position for the sermon. Put your view on speaker view if you want to look at me, and we'll begin. This is from a quote from the UUA curriculum, Faith Like a River. Quote, "The Cambridge Platform defined congregational polity. It's based on Calvinistic theology from the Puritans, and it sets out a structure for churches founded on the New Testament description of early churches. It defined matters of church officers, ministry, membership, and cooperation between churches. And although changes in the practice were being made as early as the second generation, the Cambridge Platform remains a defining document for denominations, including Unitarian Universalism, that continue to practice congregational polity. Of the 65 congregations that voted to ratify the Cambridge Platform in 1648, 21 are members of the Unitarian Universalist Association today." During the month of May, we've been talking about covenant and how that is our core tenet, our main religious philosophy of this denomination. Covenant is the underlying principle of this church and our denomination. And our covenantal religion traces its roots back to the Cambridge Platform of 1648. This form of church is an American creation. When the Pilgrims landed and later the Puritans arrived in this new world, they had to get along to survive. Small groups, and they depended upon each other for their existence, and that was based on working cooperatively together for the entire group's survival. The group's needs outweighed any desire of an individual. In order to survive in this dangerous new world, people had to decide how they would behave with each other, and covenant was the answer. And, what is a covenant? Well, here's what I consider a good definition from the UUA Commission of Appraisal. A covenant is a mutual sacred promise between individuals or groups to stay in relationship, care about each other, and work together in good faith. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we seek to raise the we above the I, the community above the individual. As seekers, we willingly choose to love each other and to stay in relationship over and over again and again. In this way, we may break promises, but leaning into the transformational powers of our faith, we can begin again in love. What makes Unitarian Universalism different from other covenantal religions is that we have no common set of beliefs. Not a covenant with God or a deity, but we are still a religion in covenant with each other. Victor Ashray writes, "The concept of covenant in a spiritual community originated in the United States with the Puritans, from whom Unitarianism evolved. Also, we UUs don't have a covenant with a deity, nor a shared dogma, nor do we accept an external authority for our religious convictions. A covenant with each other fills that void in UU communities. A covenant is what makes us a community of faith rather than just a discussion club." You see the difference between a group governed by hierarchy with laws and punishment and a group held together by a mutual sacred promise to work together in good faith? The first is quite clear in what you can and can't do, or you get punished or banished. The latter, a covenantal group, is less clear about what is acceptable behavior, but does keep the entire group's best interest in all decisions that are made. The former decides what to do by what is legal or what the authorities want. The latter decides things by what is best for the entire group. As part of becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister, I served a congregation in Chelmsford, Massachusetts for about a year. There's nothing special about being a Unitarian Universalist in Massachusetts. In the populated parts of the state, there's a UU church about every 10 to 15 miles, one in each town. I never had to explain Unitarian Universalism to anyone I met in Massachusetts, even though very few people there go to church, any church. And even though the New England and the Western United States are about equal in non-religious participation, these are the unchurched belts of our country, the West Coast and the East Coast, by all the recent surveys. Even though that's true, I saw the effects of our covenantal religion on the culture of Massachusetts. And I'll give you one tiny example. When we moved there, the roads are tiny, 2-lane roads, no shoulders, and it's crowded. There's a lot of people there. And so in the morning commute, these 2-lane roads are just packed, bumper to bumper in both directions. And when we got there, we had to turn left to get onto the side road to get to the freeway, to get to the church I served, which is 8 miles away. So you pull up and there's bumper to bumper traffic in both directions. And I put on my left blinker. And the cars to the right, one stopped to let me in. And I'm like, what good is that going to do? Because the left-hand lane's coming and it's bumper to bumper, but the left-hand lane stopped. And both directions let me in. This was something I'd never seen before in Texas or California. And don't try that in California or Texas, but it's a common practice. What is best for everyone. And over the course of time, I began doing it. Now, don't get the idea that Massachusetts is the beloved community on earth. It is not. There's the traffic. There's these tiny roads, the politics. There's ticks, snow, the humidity, and mosquitoes so thick you can't help but breathe them in during the summer. But there's a covenantal way of living there where behavior toward each other is the priority for group survival. In Massachusetts, I saw what a society originally based on covenant can be like, and that's our religious philosophy today. That's what this fellowship is at our core. We mutually and sacredly promise each other to stay in relationship, care about each other, and work together in good faith. And that kind of relationship is no easier today than it was in 1648. It's messy, it's complicated, and it requires us to start over in good faith many times. It can be frustrating, it can be irritating. And it's no surprise that church decision-making is slow and complex. How decisions that are made where every decision must be viewed as to what is best for all every time is slow. The Cambridge platform was written by the town in weekly Thursday meetings for an entire year. They talked about this for a year. These kinds of decisions are not about efficiency. They are about effectiveness. And in a covenantal religion like ours, we can create a wonderful, supportive community having far-reaching positive effects. A church like ours creates long-lasting positive effects for us and for those who come after. This is our history. This is our responsibility to carry on and progress from what we've inherited. Oh, it'll be messy, but it can be wonderful. It can be slow. It can be immensely effective. It can be countercultural, and it is our best hope. We are no longer living in a wilderness where we must depend on each other to physically survive like our ancestors did 400 years ago. We are now living in a world where we must depend on each other to spiritually survive. The stakes are high for you and for our world. If we can live in covenant with each other, if we can work to keep our promises to contribute to a caring, supportive community, if we can thus find a way to live a purpose-driven life, then we benefit, as will all those who come after us, just like our religious ancestors did for us. Amen, and blessed be.